Hi guys, Marika here with another coloring tutorial, and today I'm going to show you how to color skin with Polychromos pencils, color pencils. And today I am doing a very soft storybook feel, so I took my little Make It Crafty image as I have here, will be linked in the description down below, and I printed it out with about 25% opacity, which makes the lines very light, and therefore they kind of won't overwhelm the pencils. So I'm doing the coloring is done very lightly because I really like the soft feeling of that kind of storybook feeling. It's like soft and cuddly. A little shout out to Jane Allen. She's kind of my inspiration behind this kind of coloring. She has a blog called Jane's Color Box of Colors, Jane's Box of Colors. You should really go and see that one. She is incredible. She does beautiful. So I kind of took her the feeling from her images into this. So today we're going to talk about skin and Polychromos coloring of skin, and I'm using the same ideas as I do with the Copics, similar techniques as I do with Copics, but because these are pencils, they will go on a different way, and therefore you have to kind of change up the technique you're working with. I'm starting off by adding small shadows, and my darkest shadows are actually going to be built up by 3 different browns. So I'm starting off with this, which is Walnut Brown. It's one of the darkest browns that the Polychromos have, and I'm doing this very lightly. I hardly have any pressure at all. I'm merely just putting the pencils onto the paper and just moving it back and forth, not putting much pressure at all. And this is very important because if I would start pushing pressure, I would actually start denting the paper, and therefore I would ruin the tooth of the paper, and I wouldn't be able to get as many layers as I want to. The second thing is I'm working with very sharp pencils. I'm using the Faber-Castell's universal sharpener, I think it's called. It's a little gray one. I link it too in the description. And I use that. It's a hand drawn or hand sharpener, and it works really good. I'm going in here with the Caput Mortuum Violet. It's a very strange name, but it's a little bit of a reddish purplish tone, and I wanted to kind of give that in. A few things about when you're coloring skin, any skin, is when you choose your colors. For the shadows, you want to go for a more grayish color, and also you want to go towards the blues and the purples, while for the highlights you also want to go towards the muted tones, that is less saturated, but there you want to go towards the yellowish tones, and the mid tones is the ones that is going to be the one that have the most color, that is less saturated. I'm going in here with the Nougat pen, and just kind of enhances the different shadows. And as I talked about shadows before, you have cast shadows and you have rounded shadows. The rounded shadows you will kind of spread across the image so that you build up the shape you want, and the cast shadows will just be something just cast onto the paper, and therefore it just will have a short and pretty potent shadow, depending on how far away it is. But in this case, The cast shadows comes from her bangs mostly, and a little bit from her cheek. So those are pretty close to what they cast on, and therefore those cast shadows are a little bit harder. You can also see that I have left a thin line around her face and back of her neck, and with the ears, a little bit with the ears. And this is to add dimension, and because of the colors being very similar, I don't want them, when you have the skin color of the ear and the skin color of the cheek, if I didn't leave that little light line, you wouldn't really get, you wouldn't really see the difference of where the face ends and the ear starts. But this little line actually has sort of a name. It is a reflective light. So you have your ordinary light where you put your highlights, and in my case that is half from the front, half from the upper left corner. As you see, the shadows are cast on the right side of everything, and therefore it is from the upper left corner. But then you have the reflective light, and the reflective light can basically come from anywhere. It is where the light have been reflecting from the things around her, and it reflects back. A few things with this reflective light is that it is almost always much weaker. So if it is on a dark spot, it will have a darker cast than the kind of light part, the highlights of her face. Also, depending, in this case I actually don't really have that much of a close nature. You can't really see if she have rocks or trees or anything around her, so then I can kind of just make it a cast shadow or a highlight. While if you have kind of build up a scene with a close environment, you might want to add a little bit of the environment's colors into that reflective, very likely add into that reflective to kind of show that she's maybe in a forest and maybe it's a little bit of a greener tint to it, or in the mountains might be, if it's reddish mountain, a little bit of a redder tone. So there's a lot of those things to take into account. But as I have chosen on this image, I actually chose in the end to give her a very weak background, very far away, like a little hill with some trees on. So those will not affect her this close to us, and therefore I haven't really taken the background into account into those reflective lights. So a lot of techniques today. I'm going in, the colors I'm using today is the Walnut Brown for the absolute darkest. Then I'm going in with the Caput Mortuum Violet, the Nougat, then the Cinnamon, the LightFlesh, and the last color that you see here is a very light touch of Ivory. This Ivory will actually kind of make the whole tone a little bit more yellow. So it will make her whole face a little less pink, give that a little bit of a yellow undertone, which I really like when it comes to skin. So that is why I chose to add that little bit of the Ivory. And when you add the Ivory, at least for me, I have a little bit of a tendency to maybe try to push a little harder because you can't hardly see it, but you have to be super light, because otherwise you will get the burnishing effect and you won't be able to add any more layers on top of that. Also, when I layered this very light Ivory, all the colors I add on top will be a little bit lighter than if I hadn't added that light Ivory layer. So this pen that I'm using here is the Venetian Red, and together, no, this is actually the medium flesh. I'm gonna add some Venetian Red too, but this is the medium flesh, and I'm using it for her cheeks, her lips, a little bit on her chin, and then I'm actually going to add it onto the top of her fingers and to her elbow a little bit later on. But yeah, here I am actually enhancing the lips. Basically everywhere that there is gray lines, you have to go in with a darker color and kind of move color on top, otherwise the gray will kind of show through. I chose to not go much lighter than this, just because then you can actually see what I'm doing, but I could have taken it even lighter, but then it would start being more troublesome seeing, and then I would have to have like a reference image beside me or something of this stamp so that I could figure out where all the lines were. But in this case, it's actually just dark enough for me to be able to see where to put all the colors. So after I've done the first layer, I'm going to go in and build up a secondary and a third layer and a fourth layer. It's just working on it, and this is where I'm starting to jump between the pencils a little bit more than I did before. So now I'm going in again from dark to light, and the colors will look differently depending on which layer you put on where. So I'm starting with the walnut, which is a darker brown, but it's still kind of grayish with a little undertone of red. And then I'm going on the Caput Mortuum violet to really get that violet reddish tone out. And then I'm adding on top of that the Nougat, which is almost a grayish brown. I would probably say it's an E40 if we talk about the Copic family. And that will actually tone down the reddish tones in the violet. So this is, I had a little piece of the same cardstock just beside me where I kind of did small tests, seeing how they would layer on top of each other and such. By the way, the paper I'm working on is actually Nina Solar White, because I really like the tooth that that paper have, especially when doing these kind of storybook-esque characters. So I want this texture in there because that is what kind of gives it the feeling of being a storybook. As you see, I'm going in here also and darkening that highlight, so that the highlight isn't in the lightest tone, it's actually in the cinnamon tone, the little reflective light part, because it's going to be a little bit darker than the kind of highlights on her face. And by going in there, I still keep that line visible, but it's not so stark, so it actually enhances the roundness of her cheek instead of kind of cutting it off. Because if you leave it white and don't color on top of that little reflective light, you might actually lose that extra roundness that gives, and instead it kind of cuts off and make it look a little unnatural in a way. All the pens are very sharp, and then when I'm putting them on, I'm going in these teeny tiny rounded circles, as you can see, and this is so that I don't get any streaks on the paper. When I have my hair tutorial, which is going to follow up on the skin tutorial, where I actually color her hair, I'm actually going to use that streakiness to my advantage to give her more realistic hair. But for the skin, I don't really want that much of those lines. So I'm doing with all of these teeny tiny circles. This is cut down, so I've removed some of the pencil changes and stuff, but it is in real time. So all of her skin and eyes took me about 30 minutes. So that is about the time it takes to do the face and such on a character of this size. So what I've done, this is, I actually have cut this character off. She actually have a long dress and long legs, but I just wanted to kind of zoom in to her face and her arms to kind of just go through the skin, and therefore I zoomed in, and the image fits on a standard A2 card. So basically, I think I cut down it when it's done. I cut it down to 3.75 inches and by 4 inches. So that is, and then I just had a 1/4 of an inch on each side. So it's a pretty big printout, but I thought it would be easier to show you the techniques. So again, I am here trying to shape the face when I'm doing it, and I'm not finished with the face, but I decided to go in and work a little bit on the body. And this is how I work when I work with pens. I usually work with a part till I feel that I'm not sure where I'm going with it, or if it needs more, and then I go to another part and I start adding there. And I ended up adding a little bit too much shadow on her arms, and therefore I had to enhance the shadows on the rest of her, including her face. It's not as apparent in the end when she has the other colors around her skin for her dress and the hair, but for her arms, when they are colored, they feel a little bit too dark. Also, I miss a little bit of her arm in this time around, and I will fix that when I'm doing the hair. It's a little bit hard to kind of cut that in and show you, but so if you want to see me fix that little piece there on her left arm that I totally forgot, that will be in the hair tutorial coming up later on. So I'm going in here again, I'm doing the same steps. It is the Walnut Brown, the Caput Mortuum Violet, the Nougat, the Cinnamon and the LightFlesh, and then adding the Medium Flesh and Venetian Red on her fingertips and on her elbows. This is something I have seen on artists out there, they have done, and they look so cute. I don't know, it kind of brings this whole dimension to the image. I really like it. As you see here, when I'm working with this with the pencils, I'm actually really working on giving her that reflective light on the arm, and that helps that shadow in the crease be more apparent, that there is an arm behind. If I had gone up with the shadow on the arm all the way out to the edge, then that crease would kind of had disappeared in itself. Also, again, these reflective lights will actually be more apparent when you add the other colors, and therefore you will see how much it helps the character to stand out and have her, the different parts of her actually be different parts. So I'm going in with the Nougat and adding a little bit more shadows, just building them up. Then I'm taking the Cinnamon, and in the end I actually got a little bit heavy-handed, I think, on the other arm, so I had to work a lot of things in there to try to fix it. It happens sometimes, impatience, or just forgetting yourself when you're coloring and you add too much. If you want to have more of that smooth look that you get with Copics, you can get that either by burnishing, but if you burnish your colors, you will not be able to continue doing layers. Or you can use a blending, like the odorless blending solutions or odorless minerals, and you can also use baby oil to kind of get it to move. I heard that baby oil will leave more of a fat look to it, especially on the backside. But the odorless mineral spirits, that's the word, will also leave a little bit of like if you have accidentally gotten oil on your paper or something like that. And I kind of like not having that. However, there is a blending powder you can use with the pencils also and blend them out. I know that the artist Lacry from Lacry Art, she uses that powder, and she's really talented with the pencils. So, but I choose to just give it this kind of storybook feeling. This is where I add way too much shadow and kind of forgot myself when I'm building it up. So, but it happens, and it kind of looks pretty good anyhow. But yeah, I would probably have been a little bit more careful with all of my pencils on her hands and made them a little bit lighter than I have. See that all the shadows are on her right side of her body, also a little bit underneath the fingers to kind of give them a little bit of a rounded dimension. But otherwise I try to keep the shadows on the right side, unless they are drop shadows. But also on her face she have a little bit of a shadow on her left cheek, and that is to make the face look more rounded. So yeah. About 10 minutes left of this. It's a long video, and I'm starting to lose my voice, but that's okay. I'm finishing off her arms with the flesh tone. So I do have the ivory in the bottom also on her body, but I'm finishing off with the LightFlesh just to kind of bring that pink up. Then I decided I wanted to have a little bit more dimension just between her eyes to give it a little bit more of a bump there. So I'm carefully going in with the Nougat, and I'm super light on my hand because I really don't want to get any kind of stripes from the pencil. So I'm super light, hardly even touching the paper, and then I'm just going again super light in small circular motions on top of that Nougat, because even though you hardly saw the Nougat when I added it, the cinnamon, by layering the cinnamon, you will actually bring that out a little bit more, and you will get the feeling that it is a little bump there, and that the faces have like a dimension. I also added her a little nose, a little button nose, because I love those little button noses. They're so simple, because you do like a little U shape in your darkest color, and then you build up on the sides with your darker, and then just leave the tip very light. Then again, just adding more of those roses, because after blending I kind of hid the roses a little bit. I'm adding the color on her ears so that they are not white. I have a tendency to forget about the ears. I do everything and I start doing the shading on the ears, and then when I see the finished card and I'm like, I forgot her ears again. It happens more often than I should admit. But yeah. here is where I'm trying to fix that I accidentally pushed a little bit too hard on the cinnamon, and yeah, I should just have left it all alone, not doing this, but it's okay. It looks sort of okay. I'm darkening up the whole hand just to make it kind of be a little bit better. And then going on with the, always go like blending towards the lightest one, because it will kind of make the seam a little bit better. And then just adding small touches here and there to just sharpen up some of the reflections. And that's the arms. I'm gonna do the eyes here also, because I kind of know that this is a skin tutorial, but I couldn't just leave her without her eyes done. So after going in and now shaping the eyes a little bit more using the Rogue, which is the medium flesh, and adding in a little bit of that, because by blending the lighter colors on top, that it kind of got lost. And here I'm even going in with the Venetian Red on top. These are like colors, if you push hard, they will be really dark red, so you really need to be take it very, very careful. Going in, enhancing some of the shadows on her face, just for a little bit of added touch. You know, I just can't leave it well enough. I just had to have a little bit extra all the time, just a little bit extra. But I'm gonna give her some brown eyes, and this is where very, very sharp pencils are very, very good, because I'm gonna give it a lot of detail. So first I'm going in with some warm grays. Because of the color scheme I've chosen, the warm grays will work really good with those eyes for this specific project. And I'm even giving her one of those tear duct thingies that we have in the eye, and just building it up a little bit careful with the pinker colors that I use to make it look like she has one of those, because it kind of made the eyes a little bit more realistic. And after I shadow the eyes, I think this is the 3, it's the gray, warm gray 3. I'm adding some warm gray 1 to kind of just blend that pencils out a little bit, because it's a rounded shadow, and rounded shadows should be blended. I'm also adding the same gray tones just in the middle of her mouth and just underneath the lip, to make it look like she had teeth and that they're rounded. The eye itself, I'm actually gonna line with the Walnut Brown, and I'm even gonna give her walnut brown eyelashes. So I'm carefully, this is where I gave it a little bit more pressure, or quite a lot more pressure. If you do, you can always go over the line over and over and over to give it this darkness, but I'm giving it a little bit more pressure, and then to use it to line. If I would use say ink liner or something, it might get a little bit too harsh, so I'm just carefully using this brown, dark brown, to give her dark brown eyelashes. And I ended up actually coloring her hair brown, so it fitted really nicely, but her eyelashes look like they're made anyhow, like a little bit of a makeup. And I'm going very slowly when I'm doing these things, and the reason for this is because I really want to follow those lines. I don't want to freehand everything. I'm just using the lines that the stamp actually have and build upon them, because they're beautiful the designer behind this is, or the illustrator behind this is really good at this. So then we're going into doing the rest of the eyes now when I have done the upper lashes. I'm not going to do the lower lashes, just doing the upper lashes. And then I'm going to give her brown eyes. And I'm doing the same process that I would do with Copics. So basically I'm adding the darkest color just beneath her eyelashes, because there is where she would have a little bit of a shadow cast, or cast shadow, and there I also add kind of more pressure, and then I'm just going in and using that very light pressure that I've done for the rest of the character with my different pencils. And in this case I'm using the Walnut Brown, and I'm using the Nougat. This is the burnt umber, so I think I'm starting with the burnt umber. I'm also using the Bistre and the brown ochre, so it's a bunch of different brown pencils after one each other. Again, this is where I actually have kind of scribbled on the paper next to me to kind of figure out the pens. I do have a sheet of all the colors that I've colored up, so that I know which pencils have which colors. But in this case, as I knew I just was working with the browns, I kind of just scribbled some of them and looked how I wanted them to be. Here I go in and add that little cast shadow from the eyelashes, and as the eye is round I actually blend it out a little bit, and then I'm going in with the black pencil to add her pupil. And this is also, again, because I'm using the black and I'm going over it a couple of times instead of pushing very hard, I'm actually doing it relatively careful, and then I'm just adding a couple of layers until I feel that the black is black enough without kind of overstepping the rest of the image. And that was my kind of skin and a little bit of eye tutorial. I hope you like it. If you do, please thumbs it up. If you have any questions, just comment down below. Down below I have all the details and all the supplies used, including a list of all the pens used in today's video. So thank you again so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!